So I want to welcome you now into our conversation about how is it that we received the plan from the Lord, or how is it that we conceived the strategic plan, plans of hope, as we received it from God. What was a process that we went through for that? And that's a great story. The story starts with listening sessions. I shared with you earlier that as Bishop Fobb arrived in our diocese in 2013, the first thing he wanted to do is listen to the people that had been entrusted to him. And that was not just something that he did on a formal basis in getting to know each other. He took that one step further in listening, not only to the people in the pew, but listening to the priest that he was going to stand shoulder to shoulder with as he began to shepherd our diocese. What unfolded, you might say, as the first step along the way were formal listening sessions as Bishop Fobb began to listen to his priests and the people in the pew. For 12 months, Bishop Fobb listened to his priests. There were one-on-one gatherings getting to know each other. There were small lunches that we had together. There were large gatherings of the entire presbyterate, all the priests together, back to one-on-one, back to lunches, back to the large group gatherings. Over an entire year, Bishop Fobb invested in relationship with his priests. And many people have asked, why is it that the planning process has taken so long? And that's because we were in no rush along the way. The process was more important, you might say, than the plan itself. How we got to receive the plan was really important to Bishop Fobb. And listening to the priests was an essential part of the process. There was the initial one-on-one gatherings where he got to know them and they got to know him. There were lunches where they arrived at the bishop's house and he asked them 3 questions. First question, what's the best thing about the diocese? Number 2, what are your dreams for the diocese? And number 3, what are your concerns that need to be addressed as we move forward together? A lot came to the surface as he listened to his priest over a 12-month period. And it was not only the priest that he wanted to listen to, but he took another 6 months after that to intentionally go across the diocese and listen to the laity, listen to our lay leaders, listen to the people in the pew. Systematically and very intentionally organized throughout the diocese in regions hosted in parishes, Bishop Fobb listened to the people of our diocese. There were large gatherings in churches. There were small lunch gatherings at the pastoral center. Some of those conversations happened one-on-one. Some of those conversations happened at his house as he listened to people. Over an entire 6-month period, Bishop Fobb listened to well over 1,000 voices of the laity in our diocese. And as Bishop Fobb compared what he heard from the laity to what he heard from the priest, there was an amazing synergy. There was a commonality, you might say, of what God was saying to him as he was beginning to listen to the people of our diocese. Here's some of those themes that emerged. Number 1, our adults were hungry. And perhaps as you are watching this video, entering into the conversation, you know what that's like. We heard the hunger from our adults in lots of different ways. Some people said, I can't defend my faith. I have friends, brothers and sisters, a spouse, my own children who've left the Catholic faith for other non-Catholic Christian churches, and they're asking me questions, and I can't defend the faith. Other adults acknowledged that as they didn't learn what they wanted to learn earlier in life, they just reached a different season in life where they were asking questions about the Catholic faith and didn't know where to get the answers. In a variety of ways, in some very personal stories, we heard from adults in the pew that they were hungry to learn more. And it wasn't just the adults, it wasn't just the parents, but they also shared stories about our youth. We had some great things happening in our diocese, and still to this day do. But a lot of the laity described a hunger for, you might say, more. How can we better serve our youth? Again, on the shoulders of those who have given themselves generously to serve our youth, how is it that we can do an even better job at a critical stage of their life, at a critical stage in the history of the church? How can we do a better job in our parishes serving our young people? And for some of our parishes, that mission extends beyond, you might say, the traditional structures of youth ministry, but into our Catholic schools. And there emerged again a hunger from the people in our diocese to build on the tradition in our Catholic schools. Again, we've got a great history of Catholic education in our diocese. Many of you watching have benefited from that personally. But I think we can all agree that there is a hunger inside our youth today, and we have an unparalleled opportunity to strengthen our Catholic identity, building on the tradition, and improving our Catholic schools, not only with the Catholic identity and formation, but with all the other things that it takes to make great Catholic schools to serve the people in our diocese. We heard lots about Sunday, a hunger within people, and that's hunger is what brings them to Mass on Sunday. And so whether it is with more vibrant music or hospitality or a sense of community, or of course we have great priests and deacons who are doing the best they can to preach, but sometimes we heard from the laity that with that valiant effort, there isn't always a touching in their hearts and a relevancy, you might say, to the circumstances of their lives. We heard lots about how is it that we can improve our experience of being with the Lord in the sacred tradition of our Sunday liturgies. We also heard a lot about the diocese, and we came face to face with the fact that for many people, perhaps even you as you're watching, the diocese is seen as an institution rather than a people. It's an it rather than a us, you might say. The diocese seemed to be a regulatory agency that told parishes what they could or could not do, rather than all of us together, working together, and the bishop himself and the team around him supporting what's happening in the diocese as across all of our parishes. That meant that the pastoral center, which was already doing great work, sometimes felt a disconnect between what they were doing so valiantly and with great passion with what was being received in the parishes. And sometimes the parishes felt like there was a disconnect between what they were doing and what was happening in the pastoral center. We had great people on both sides of the equation, but how can we bridge the gap so that we're all working together to the same end and inside the same mission? We also heard that we had opportunities with stewardship to help the people in our diocese see their place in the church and help them know how they can respond so that we have a strong, not only financial future for our diocese, but also helping people now know how they can respond to what God's doing in their lives. And in that response, we heard lots of different themes about outreach, whether it's the beautiful, strong foundation we have with Catholic Charities in our diocese, or the amazing ways that we have come together in the past in hurricane relief. All of that kind of under the banner, you might say, of outreach. We heard these themes in lots of different ways, and we heard other themes than these, but these were the ones that rose to the surface, you might say, most frequently. It was sometimes in different stories and sometimes in different words, but we were able to, you might say, organize what we heard within these themes from the listening sessions that we heard from the laity and that we heard from the priests. Why is it that our strategic plan is moving in the direction it's moving? It's because this is what we heard from people. This is what we heard from priests, and we wanted to respond. And part of that response was rolling up our sleeves and working together so that we could come up with a plan that would not only honor what we heard, but honor what's working across the country. We developed these super committees, you might say, these commissions. There were 13 commissions in all that each were tasked with a specific, you might say, topic that they were going to focus on. So one of our commissions was adult formation, and one of our commissions was youth formation. One of our commissions was diocesan governance, which helped our pastoral center understand how it is connected to the mission of the parishes. These 13 commissions were comprised of, believe it or not, over 500 lay leaders rolled up their sleeves with us, hand in hand, so that we could come up with solutions. As you listen to the story of what God's doing in our diocese, this is one of the miracles that I am most thankful for us to be in the trenches, standing shoulder to shoulder with over 500 lay leaders, some of whom were there throughout the entire process, some of whom started at key parts and contributed with key insights. Whether those lay leaders were there for the entire 9 months of planning or for key aspects of it, we would not be where we are today without the contribution from our lay leaders who helped us understand not only where they are, but what's working across the country. It was our lay leaders who helped us kind of look at the other places of the country who were responding to similar themes, so that we weren't, you might say, recreating the wheel, you might say, but learning from what's working now. So much of planning is not just listening to people, but developing something that we know is going to work because it's being proven to work in other places. And that's one of the things that excites me about what you're going to hear about in our strategic plan, is that it's not just wishful thinking, but it's grounded in what we know is working in other places across the country. And these commissions were also grounded in listening to God Himself. There was a discipline of discernment within the commissions. And when we talk about receiving the plan from God, that's not just something that we say with you because we're hoping that God blesses our efforts. No, it's something that we actually receive from God. Throughout the whole entire process, there was a discipline of discernment. There were meetings where we stopped right in the middle and prayed a rosary together. And at the end of each decade, we just listened to what God was saying to us. There was time in the commissions that before we talked about what we were going to do, we actually formed those on the commissions to listen to God with some spiritual formation before we got work with the business of strategic planning. What makes our plan unique is that we listen to God and what God wanted to say to us through the process. It wasn't simply best practices, and although we did a lot of research, we also did a lot of praying, listening to what God wanted us to do, so that God could show us how we could tailor the plan to the people of our diocese, that God could tell us when to do it and how to unfold it. We received in the discipline of discernment more than we could have ever received if we were just doing things on our own, following a business model. And finally, we drafted a plan. We put some pen to paper. After listening to what we thought God was saying to us, we set some diocesan goals so that our diocese could move forward together. It started with the listening sessions. We listened to our priests for an entire year. We listened to the laity for 6 months. We spent 9 months after that in these commissions, which was imbued with a discipline of discernment. And from that, we were able to put some things on paper that will offer our diocese a direction as we move forward, not only as, you might say, individual parishes tailoring it, but all of our parishes together in this together. And it's because of the process we followed in conceiving the plan that we're confident that that same process will guide us as we tailor the plan to our individual parishes.